Hello guys, and welcome to another video. And in this one we're going to talk about arm sculpting. It's kind of like a supplementary video to our organic modeling class, because somehow the system decided to use a different microphone. It's not recording any voice, so I have to do it with another video just to support our students. So basically we're going to do the arm today, and we're going to start with the deltoid, right? It's going to be coming from the ring formed by the clavicle and scapula on the back. I have this big triangular shape. It's called the triangle muscle. So just make a big triangle, something like that. Okay, you can also break it up into three sections. So if you draw a line here, right, that's one, and then its frontal branch will be something like that. Okay, so there is some breakup in the middle, right? They don't really end at the same point. These ones are ends on the side, right? The same thing goes for the back. You can also make a separation on the back. So you have this middle branch. I have the side branch, and that's pretty much the same. Okay, so I have to do that real quick and then smooth this out. In reality, they could be favoring to the front more. Okay, and also be aware that it's not about drawing out those lines. In reality, you don't really see those lines that much unless you develop those muscles extremely. Most of the time you see a pretty flat result, but just for the sake of it, right, we're gonna try to make them stronger. Okay, even that, you don't really see a very visible line. In most of the cases, it should be a blurry separation here, like a little valley down there. Right. One thing I really want to take care of is the actual arc of those forms. It's not about the lines; it's about what's happening in the lines, right? So you want to make sure that they have the correct curvature. Okay, or in other words, if I hold it down, Control Shift, and use lasso and just drag over here, you should be able to see the actual arc you defined, right? So if those are not perfect, you need to think about what's going on. Okay, and because this is rising up, apparently, excuse me, it should be arcing up more, right? Having a bigger arc, basically. I'm trying to use Move Brush to help me define those arcs better. Okay. You want to feel the volume that's happening. Okay, we can compare this to before. And this is way more flat than what I have now. Right, so you want to define the correct amount of arc. Of course, I want to, in this case, exaggerating this part because this is rising up, so there's some contracting happening to the muscle, right? So I'm intended to make it stronger. Okay, you can also use Clip It Up to give it more volume as well, but Move Brush should suffice to cases like this. Okay. All right, and underneath, of course, you have the most known muscle, the bicep. Right, it's gonna be down there. Okay. It's basically attaching to the scapula on the back, but that attachment is kind of like below the spine of the scapula on the back. There is a attachment, right? A little. A little process or something, right, on the back. That's kind of like connecting or where this bicep is connecting. But basically in here you'll see just that, right, connecting to the bottom of the deltoid, basically. Okay. Excuse me. So you have the bicep. I mean, because of the contracting, I think I can give it some more volume here. It's kind of like a capsule, but it's thinner on the two end, and it's of course bigger in the middle. It's kind of like attachment to the lower arm, and you have another one goes this way to the muscles on the lower arm, but it's hardly noticeable in some cases, so I don't have to be going overboard on that. On the back, you have this heart-shaped tricep, also going underneath the deltoid, right? So something like that. Of course, in the middle you have a separation. Now, do you really see it that much? Yeah, of course, if you have a super developed muscle. But again, for most of the cases, right, you shouldn't see too much. But of course, that's also based on the pose. Okay, this is based on the position of the arm and how it's bended. Okay, so basically, when the arm is bending forward, for most of the cases, this muscle will get more flattened. But in this particular case, though, the arm is also going to the back in, if I can draw that out, in this direction. Right? It's all rotating this way. That kind of like pushes this in also. So if you ever do things like push-up, you feel that this muscle is getting squeezed when you are down on the ground. And it's causing this one to also have some volume. Right? You will feel that part. Okay. Good. So, is there something else? Yes, there are two more smaller ones you can also kind of create. Okay. In between the bi and tricep, you have a smaller one here. Has a really long name. You can look up for it, but it's kind of like a little padding underneath the bicep here. A little padding there. Okay. You can also see a little bit of that in here. Right, a little bit of that. Okay. I want to make sure that you take care of the relationship though. So this is the deltoid, and that's the little padding, the thin flat muscle underneath the bicep, and you have the bicep here. Okay, so it's kind of like in the front view, this saying is behind, something like that. Would you really do it? I guess you can give it some, but again, this one is kind of like a weaker one compared to the rest of the big guys. Right? The big guys are supposed to be stronger. Okay, and you can see a little of that over here, and also you have a little triangular shape, triangular muscle here. Okay, that's also connected to the humerus, the bone of the arm, to the scapula on the back. Some triangular shape. And when you rest the arm, you probably will see it, right? I'm making this guy too strong. Flatten that. Try to control the intensity and proportion of those guys. This is obviously in the wrong proportion. This should be a much smaller triangle. Okay, and that's about it for the upper arm. Going to the lower arm. Okay, one thing you want to figure out is where do you start to see the lower arm. If you draw a line here, that's going to be the edge of the tricep on the back. It's wrapping around the elbow. Elbow is a part of the ulna bone. Right, it's the ending of the ulna bone. It's kind of like a little beak shape. If I draw that out, it's kind of like enchanted into the socket of the humerus from the arm, something like that, right? And the actual bone, actual tip of the elbow is part of the ulna bone for the forearm. Goes from here to the to this thing. Okay. That's the visible bump, right, on the outside of your wrist. From there to the elbow, that's your ulnar bone. For the lower arm, of course, you have two bones, right? Or forearm, you have two bones. The primary one is the ulnar here, and there's another one going from the side of the thumb, right, to the side of the to the outside of the humerus. Okay, and that's kind of like the twisting thing where you twist the arm. Okay. Anyway, so I'm gonna make the edge of the the tricep really clear, and I can also make the edge of the elbow kind of clear. I make those things more visible. It's gonna help me to figure out the things. Okay. And here's this padding I was talking about earlier. That's underneath the bicep. You can make it branch down, and it's gonna goes to the inside of the arm, and this one goes to the outside. And this separation will be where the muscle of the lower arm goes under, right? And that's what's going on in there. Excuse me. So this goes here, right? So some of the things that's happening to the lower arm may appear to be a little bit more complicated than you want them to be, right? But you can separate it into two big clumps first. So this basically divided by the ulna here, right? Divided by this bone here, right? You have this side and the other side. Think of these muscles to be separated into those two sides, okay? And just think of that like divided the whole arm into two big clumps. It's easier for you to remember. So two big clumps, this guy, okay, this guy. That's one big clump, and that's one, and another one on the other side. Basically, you can think of the muscles as just two pieces. And most of the times, you probably will just see those two pieces because most of the people do not really have a very developed muscle system. Okay, the thing about human being is that we are very different compared to animals. Other animals are having their muscle developed and stays developed. Human being, if you don't work out, you don't have muscle at all. If you work out and you have muscle, you stop workout, the muscle goes away. Kind of like a really sad story to human beings. Don't know why, just the reality. You have to keep working out just to keep the muscle there. Okay, so basically two clumps, right? This guy and this guy divided by the ulna in the middle, and of course the other side. Right, two big clumps. Okay, now let's talk about what's happening inside. For the side that's going towards the side of the pinky finger, right? This side is kind of fairly simple. You can break it up into four branches in a fairly parallel way, but the first one is kind of like a small one here, this guy, and you have a bigger one over here, a bigger one. So then I go in towards somewhere near the center of the wrist. I have a few smaller ones. Let's just say four, right? So a smaller one here, a bigger one here, another smaller one here, and then another bigger one here, and that should be the ones that you should pay attention to. and that takes all the volume of this area. They are fairly parallel. You can also think of those guys as a fanning gradient, right? They're fanning out from this. They're all underneath the edge from the tricep, right? And so the smaller attachment for the tricep in here also. And this is called tricep, right? Okay, but basically 1, 2, 3, 4, small, big, smaller, big. Okay. Of course, this may appear very drastically different from anatomy books. If you look at some anatomy book and others, those diagrams are very different. So you're gonna have to think which one do you follow, or I guess it's easier to look at some of the, I guess, real references is gonna be a better way of figuring out. If you really look at those anatomy books, they draw things in very different ways. Maybe they're talking about the same thing, but diagram on some sense is it's technically showing you things, but are they accurate on proportion and stuff? Maybe not. Okay, I guess it's also based on like how those muscles are developed. Maybe it just looks different for different people, right? But you can see I'm also making them kind of weak, so you don't have to make them too strong or too visible, especially for this part. Okay, for this half. The other half can be divided into two big clumps, two big sections. Right, so there, from here, you draw a line to here, the center of the arm on the side. You draw a line. So the division basically this way, right? You have a big cluster. Okay, now if you realize that all the classes I drew out so far are fairly simple. They're kind of parallel. They may have different directions, different sizes, but they're kind of parallel. This piece I just drew out is also like that. They're tilted. They're looking like a fish, or like a teardrop, whatever you want to call it, like a diamond shape, or right, like the trapezius on the back, something like that sometimes, right? But yeah. And then from here you have a bigger one and a smaller one if you want to break it up. Come on, yeah. Break it up, you have a smaller one here, a smaller one here. Right, and then a bigger one here. And this bump is probably one of the most visible for the forearm. Okay, this piece. Now about this breakup, if you wanted to make it more visible, you could, but I think it's, most of the time maybe you can see just one clump, but you can also try to reference, right, a real photo after you learn the basics of the muscles, and you can do reference more from a actual human being's photo. It's gonna be better than some of the diagrams. But diagrams are good for learning, right? To understand what's going on. For actual shapes, I would say a real photo is much better than any diagram drew out. And give them some more volume, of course. in terms of the relationship, this guy that's on the thumb side is going to be on top or overlapping on top, and they don't really overlap that much though. Almost like they're getting parallel when they meet. Okay. So far, you have this big punch, right, and this big clump that's again separated into those smaller branches, right? What's happening here though when it reaches to here? Well, you'll have you have a branch that goes here to the middle, and then all the strands are attached to those fingers. So here you'll see some high ground like that. Okay, some high ground. Okay, and then from here, right, we have that separation, so you can have something like this here. The clump on this side, I can make it stronger here. Now the only part that's kind of getting a little bit more complicated is this final piece that I haven't touched yet. This area from the bone to the center side of the other side of the arm, right here. This area is when it comes to a bit more confusing. The other parts are fairly simple. They are parallel with slight different directions and sizes, like these two and the others, right? So don't overthink those areas. The only area that's getting a little bit confusing is this part. So how do you make sense of this part? Now you can start with a gradient, radial direction separation here. So you have all the branches, 1, 2, 3. You can see they're going out, fanning out, right? Fanning out, and draw this out. The first 3, you have a smaller one here. You have this guy. You have this guy. Right? You can see 3 things are fanning out. But however, whenever you need to do this kind of smaller things, you have to be careful about their intensity. And also, drawing a line on the edge wouldn't be enough. You have to really define the volume. Right? And it's more important to define the volume than trying to give them a very visible edge. Okay. And then another branch in here. And let me do some movements. So basically, you have four branches. So a smaller one here, and then 3 more. That's kind of long, and those 3. So 1, 2, 3, 4. It's very easy to make them 2 equal. For the most part, those 2 are not that distinctible. So you can maybe make them 1 piece. Right, because you have skins above them, it's not going to be that easy to be recognized. Even this one, you can kind of like make it a little bit more blurrier compared to the rest of the things. Make them blend into each other more. Right. The part that's really kind of getting a little bit more visible is this last shape that does not go from the very beginning, somewhere down the way in the middle. Right, I have another strip. Okay. So this strip goes here, this way. Right. And eventually 2 more strands that goes below this strip, and it's, you have this guy and this guy, right? 2 more down there. And that's the structure in there if you look at the anatomy diagram somewhere you can find. But those 2 again will cause a little bump maybe in here, but really you don't see this, right? daily, like, you know, you don't see them. So I think you may feel like a little bump, but if you look at your arm, it's really clean. There's not that much happening, right? Because the muscles are not as developed, and also they are having skin wrapping around them, so in theory they shouldn't be as clear as what's happening, what's showing up on the anatomy books. So be aware of, you know, what kind of thing you're making. If you're making a monster, right, you can exaggerate all these things, no problem, right? If you're making like a relatively realistic human being, you can see you can blend those things a lot. You don't have to really make them appear this much. Now I find the primary ones though. Find the primary ones. Okay. Now in this case, the primary ones will be this guy and this guy. Then that's the ones you can see more, especially when the arm is bending in a straight way. You kind of like see this little valley in here. Now you see this strip becoming more visible, and that's the ones you see more. You can see after the organization, it feels better, right? Of course, you kind of also can enhance what's going on to the elbow. Because that's kind of like the important volume in here too. Elbow is part of the ulna. That means it's part of the lower arm, right? It follows the lower arm, kind of like a solid piece. Okay. Whenever I'm reaching to something like this, right? This is all by imagination. I don't have any reference, anything on my screen. Just this. So this is all from memory. So at this point, if I really want to be more serious, I will really gather some real references now, because this is just too conceptually done. It could work for like a stylized character. If you want to go for something more real, I would highly recommend you to find some real photo. Okay. So here, because of the attachment is going this way, you can see a little bit of a thing in here. Goes this way, attach the side of the muscles. That's the attachment of the bicep, right? When it comes to anatomy, I wouldn't recommend you to try to remember everything possible. It's just too messy. You'll get into trouble remembering those things, and you'll forget them if you don't do them. So have a moderate mindset and have everything every time when you sculpt the human character, right? Just have the book ready, right? Have the references ready, and you copy, right? So what's the harm of that? I mean, we're not really having to kind of say, okay, I really need to do it without any reference. That's just not the case, right? Everyone gathers a reference. And frankly, we do not know. The collective knowledge of human being does not understand human anatomy to full extent either. Just last month, they just detected a new organ in the human body. So even the whole world doesn't understand the whole anatomy yet. So you don't have to really force yourself to learn too much, right? You should remember a few things here and there, right? Eventually you can get to a good enough stage. At the end of the day, it's about the character, not about the muscles on the character anyways, right? You want to figure out the characteristic of your character instead of dwindling the anatomy all the time. This is not the focus, right? It's something good to have, make your character convincing. That's important. It's important to learn. It's also very boring to learn, to be honest. Anatomy is the most boring thing to learn, to me at least. But it's important, so you keep learning, but you don't try to push yourself too hard. Human men are not very good at remembering a whole collection of things, right? So don't get too frustrated. Learn it in a moderate mad side. And if you don't remember it this time, you may remember it next time. You do better next time, right? It's not about solving the problem with one goal. It's about making it better, next time and next time. Okay. All right, that's it for the arm sculpting. As you can see, it doesn't take a lot of effort. 30 minutes more or less. Should get something good enough to go. Right, that's the whole model. You see those strips are not in the right place anymore, so probably need to get this out. Yeah, it's some work, but not that hard. Not that hard. Okay. Alrighty. Okay. So yeah, spend some time and practice on this. This is what we do in our organic modeling class. Right? This is the freshman class. What we do is to sculpt a creature and a human figure with possible minimal clothing, but I think I went a little bit overhead on some of the clothing. Some environment like rock sculpting, foliage, some weapons. I have some weapons in here too. Yeah, some weapon sculpting. Okay. All right. So that's gonna be it for the arm sculpting. Hope this helps to not just our student, but anyone who's watching the video, right? And I guess sometimes it'll be also something we did here on the body and the back. And it's really helpful to try to learn those anatomy stuff, and also try to remember their names. I didn't mention a lot of names, right? Especially for the bottom part. If you look at their names, they're really long words. Doesn't mean they don't really have any meaning, though. If you try to understand their meaning, it's easier to remember their names. But I guess it's more important to remember their shapes and how many are they, right? All right, cool. So that's it for today. Thanks for watching. See you next time.